You know, there were 40 brands at Watches and Wonders, not just Rolex and Tudor. Hi everyone and welcome to Shaluso, and yes, today I am talking about what in my view are some of the best of the rest that participate in Watches and Wonders. Of course, Rolex and Tudor have gotten plenty of attention, and Breitling has been making a few waves for releasing just before Watches and Wonders, but there have been so many good watches released. There were 40 brands that released. Some of them were just variations, and then some of them were really interesting, completely new models, new complications, and just interesting variations that push the envelope a little bit further than just changing the color of a dial or changing the reference number of something from a 1 to a 2. So today I'm going to talk about what for me were sort of the best of the rest of Watches and Wonders. Now of course I can't name everything, so I've just picked 3 of my favorites that I think are the highlights of Watches and Wonders, or the Watches and Wonders season of 2021. And the first one is of course the Bulgari Octo Finissimo Perpetual calendar retrograde. Now, I get the feeling that every year they just have a quick meeting in Bulgari about what they're going to do for the next year's sort of big announcement. I think they just look in a book and say, okay, which world record have we not broken? Because this is now their 7th world record that they hold for making a thin watch. This is the thinnest automatic perpetual calendar ever made. The movement is just over 2 millimeters thick. The entire watch is 5.8 millimeters thick. And this is pure Bulgari. Bulgari has made a name for itself in creating these ultra thin watches, but what I love about this in particular is it goes back to its roots. The Octo Finissimo has its roots in the original Gerald Genta brand. Not necessarily designed by Genta himself, but definitely from his brand. Specifically from the Octo Bi-Retro, which was much chunkier and featured retrograde indicator. With this, what they've done is they've essentially fused the two together. They've brought back the retrograde DNA from the original Genta years and put that into the now ultra thin Octo Finissimo to create this perpetual calendar. And the best part is it's not just one, but 2 retrograde indications. You have a retrograde for the date, as well as for the leap year indicator, as well as day and date functions in normal subdials, and the time at the center. It's an extremely elegant solution. Rendered in titanium, it does cost $59,000 US, which may sound like a lot, but this is a perpetual calendar. It's a well-finished perpetual calendar, and it happens to be a world record holder. So when you put that in perspective, it seems like a pretty good deal. And I love how essentially every year Bulgari just adds another complication and not a proper other step to expand the Octo Finissimo line. It's not just about changing, a dial color. They actually put in the work to make sure they have something genuinely new for this collection if they're not releasing a completely new collection altogether. So I think this is another victory for Bulgari. My only thing is now they're starting to get a bit predictable. I have a feeling next year they'll just break another record. Next, I'd like to highlight Chopard. Now, they've actually been a proper watch manufacturer for 25 years, making their own in-house movements. And they celebrated that with their new LUC QF Jubilee. And I think this is an important watch, A, because it highlights them as a movement manufacturer. I think any serious manufacturer needs to consider, especially in today's climate where customers are more educated, collectors know the difference between an ETA and an in-house. And when you're paying $15,000 for something, you kind of want a little bit more exclusivity on the inside, and exclusivity in general, because this is only a 25-piece limited edition, so they definitely know how to make something special. Design-wise, it's a 39mm steel case, so very in keeping with today's time with most people wanting steel, but it's got this beautiful tuxedo dial that they've rendered in silver and blue instead of the traditional silver and black. Adds a little bit of pop of color to it. It's got some really cool indices and hands as well. It's a very simple watch and probably more of a dress watch, but just the way that they've executed is so, I think, right for 2021. They haven't really pandered or followed any particular trends. It's not green, it's not an integrated bracelet. Instead, it's just classical watchmaking, celebrating them making their own movements. And also, very importantly, this movement is properly advanced. It's a micro order, 2 barrels, COSC certified, and it carries the Fleurier quality certificate, which is similar to the Geneva seal. This is something that was established by Chopard, Parmigiani Fleurier and Beauvais to sort of compete with the Geneva seal in terms of establishing their own standards for that region. And I think that's, again, something that adds just a little bit more interest into the movement and the way that it's designed, knowing that it has those standards that it has to adhere to and that it has to constantly push to exceed. So a great addition from Chopard, and hopefully one that draws a bit more attention to their watches. Because while yes, the Mille Miglia does use tons of externally sourced movements, Chopard actually makes a lot of really nice watches, very well made. If you want to see a little bit more of Chopard's quality, take a look at Mr. B's video about the Chopard Alpine Eagle chronograph. He does a great hands-on with it, and you can see a lot of details that maybe you might not have seen with pictures. And then we have Patek Philippe, and no, I'm not talking about the green Nautilus, which honestly, I couldn't care less about. No, instead, I'd like to talk about something that probably won't be a hype watch. It won't be something that's going to be talked about that it sells XYZ over retail, but it's a lot more interesting in my view, because it's what I like to call a just because watch. It's not something that necessarily anyone specifically asked for, even knew they wanted, but they did it anyway. And that is the Patek Philippe In-Line Perpetual calendar. What this does is it uses one single aperture to show the day, the date, and the month, as well as being a perpetual calendar. And despite being a very much because you can, a very, I guess, sort of frivolous endeavor, it's actually quite logical. When you look at it, how you read it in line, it's how you would read the date. But more importantly, it's Patek flexing their muscles again as a watchmaker in terms of what they can make. They actually had to specially design this so that they could get all of that in line. The date disc has to be split onto 2 discs, so technically it's also a big date, as opposed to the date figure being just on 1 disc. And all of this is squeezed into just an 11mm thick case, which granted not as thin as the Octo Finissimo, but by normal watch standards, it's nice and slim. It looks gorgeous, and it has this really cool sort of satin grain finish on the dial, which I think is something that Patek is probably going to explore a bit more. They've done a few different models with it in the past. I think it's a great look, because it's not too formal and too old school, but also it's still within Patek's sort of comfort zone of not wanting to be too modern or too sort of, I guess, trendy, for lack of a better way to put it. Patek is always trying to make timeless watches, and this is just another example of it. And for the small price of $130,000, you can have this on your wrist. It is a little bit steep, but definitely a lot more watch that you get versus just getting a steel Nautilus at what, 5 times retail now? Who even cares? But overall, these are my favorite sort of best of the rest. I will probably be doing another few more brand specific videos for some of the brands that had a bigger release this year. But let me know in the comments below, what were your favorites from Watches and Wonders 21? And also, what do you want to see throughout the rest of the year? I think it's important to remember that last year showed us that companies don't have to be beholden to just releasing once a year. They've unlocked that whole world of being able to release online. So what do you want to see in the future, and what prediction videos do you want me to make so I can do some renderings on them as well? I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. And of course, if you like this video, make sure you like it and share it. If you want to see more pictures and infographics of watches, make sure you follow me on Instagram at Shaluso. And if you want to see more videos of watches, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell as well so you know when the next video comes out. In any case, thanks for watching this video, and we'll catch you in the next one.